The movie starts with a small rover being driven over the barren land of Marks. Inside, we see Vincent and Rebecca are driving head-on into a sandstorm, and she mentions that this is going to ruin Kim's dig. Vincent isn't happy about it either, so she tells him to lighten up. They disappear in the dust as they go to pick up Kim. They have been on Mars for over 6 months now, as the rover finds Kim working on her dig. Vince calls out to her, but she doesn't want to listen and stop her work. She even tells them to go back and leave her to it. Inside the rover, Rebecca asks Vince what he hates about Mars, and he quickly mentions a lot of stuff, and one of them being Kim, who annoys him a lot. He even hates the 6-month trip back home. Kim finally comes back to them, and now they can go, but she is very mad that she has to go back. Back at the base, Charles, the commander, calls out to Vince because he wants him to come back quickly and fix the electronics on the base. Richard seems tired when they receive a call from the command station. They are informed that they have 19 hours left to get out of Mars, and they seem glad about that. But the power goes out again, and Charles tells them to manually check every system. Vince and the others are on their way back, and they need him to fix the power. Marco asks Charles to go back out to fix a broken sensor. Charles is conflicted about it, so he tells him to take Richard and to make it quick. Richard is not happy about it, but Charles tells them to come back before dark, so they get suited up and run into Vince and the others as they go out at the door. Vince asks Richard to come back quickly because he needs his help, but Marco seems excited to go out and fix his broken sensor, and Kim is mad that they get to go out while she is forced to come back early. As Vincent is fixing the cooling system at the base, Robert Irwin, the mission psychologist, comes over and offers him a cup of coffee. Vincent spots the incoming path of the Aurora lander and jokes that the pilots would be stopped for drunk driving if they were on Earth. Irwin suggests that he should only start worrying about the lander once he's on the ship. When Irwin questions if he's eager to return home, Vincent explains that he's not anxious about reaching home, but he's worried about the trip and how long it will take. Kim chooses to inspect Marco's workspace to understand why he wishes to return outside. Soon, the team discovers a picture of holes in a rock. Lane comments that these holes seem to be made by tiny organisms. When they examine the sample under the microscope, they see evidence of bacteria dividing. Kim figures out that Marco is keeping his discovery from Brunel because he doesn't want to split the recognition. Brunel gets in touch with Harrington and Marco to announce that the digging area is restricted. Marco, on the other hand, tells Harrington to act as if he didn't hear Brunel due to a poor connection. As Marco examines the soil sample he just collected, the earth beneath him unexpectedly gives way and engulfs him. Harrington quickly exits the rover to assist him, but the steam prevents him from seeing into the hole. Shortly after Harrington gets in touch with the base, Brunel shows up with Lauren Dalby to save Marco. But Harrington announces that Marco has passed away. Dalby believes that Marco might still be alive, so she tries to descend into the hole, but Brunel prevents her from doing so because he's worried she might get hurt in an accident. Brunel and Harrington head back to the base to get the right equipment to recover Marco's body, leaving Dalby at the dig site. As soon as they get to the base, Kim questions Brunel about revealing their find. Harrington reminds her that Marco has just passed away, but Kim suggests that Marco brought it on himself by breaking the rules. Shortly, Mission Control gives them the go-ahead to recover Marco. Before they leave, Irwin suggests Brunel should scold Kim for her actions. He reassures the captain that Marco's death isn't his fault, but Brunel insists that he is accountable for any errors made by the team. While Dalby is waiting in the rover, she suddenly hears someone attempting to enter the vehicle. She tries to alert Brunel via the radio, but he can't hear her due to signal issues. When the team reaches the dig site, Dalby is missing, leading Brunel to believe she ignored his orders and went into the pit. Lane, however, suspects that Dalby fell in, as it's not like her to disregard an order. Vincent then descends into the pit, securing his suit with a rope. As he nears the bottom, he spots a tiny life form on a rock. He goes deeper, but starts to breathe heavily, remembering his confinement in the Aurora space station. Brunel quickly instructs Lane and Irwin to pull him up. Once Vincent regains his composure, he informs Brunel that he didn't see anyone at the pit's bottom. Irwin surveys the area and discovers 2 sets of footprints leading towards the base, leaving Brunel confused as they could have used the rover. The team quickly gets in touch with Kim and tells her to get ready for potential injuries. Kim mentions that Marco might might have brain damage from lack of oxygen because his suit is likely broken. When Harrington looks at the tracking system, he spots two figures 50 meters from the base. As Kim tries to reach them on the radio, Harrington goes to the airlock to let them in. On the screens, Kim sees a person stumbling towards the base. When Harrington opens the airlock, Marco falls to the floor with a hole in his helmet. After taking off the helmet, Harrington recoils in shock at the sight of Marco's thin face. Marco grabs an electric drill and stabs Harrington in the stomach. Harrington falls, but he manages to hit the alarm to warn Kim. In a short while, Kim moves towards the airlock, but she quickly runs away when she sees Marco approaching. Dalby, who is infected, arrives at the airlock soon after, but Harrington manages to get away even with his injury. Before long, both Marco and Dalby catch up to Kim. As Kim tries to escape from Marco, Dalby loses her footing on some liquid that was spilled on the floor. Brunel quickly shows up and finds the base in chaos. Kim is able to get away and trap the two sick astronauts in a room. As Marco smashes the glass door, Brunel tells Kim to put on a suit while he tries to fend off their sick colleagues. Brunel attempts to talk sense into Marco when he gets out, but he seems not to comprehend him. Kim soon exits the base after suiting up. Brunel dashes to the airlock, but the infected astronaut catches him and stabs him in the shoulder before he can get away. The remaining crew members lock the door to trap the infected and seek refuge in the hydroponic dome. Lane tries to tend to Brunel's injury, but she admits that she can't do it well because she's not a doctor. Brunel comes to the realization that he's nearing death when he can't recall his family's faces. He asks the crew to let his family know that he was thinking of them during the mission. Brunel mentions that he's thirsty, so Erwin gives him some water. Suddenly, Brunel grabs Erwin by the throat, but the other crew members manage to pull his hand away and restrain him. Brunel soon relaxes and gradually loses awareness. Before he dies, he warns the crew that they won't make it back home. Kim secures Brunel's body to the table, worried that it might come back to life. Erwin pleads with her to stop, but Kim notes that Dalby and Marco are still active even after being exposed to the air outside. Vincent chooses to drape the body with a blanket. Shortly after, they hear a blast from outside. Kim checks the screen and finds out that the infected astronauts got out of the base by using an explosive to destroy the airlock. The team can't reach the space station because the communication systems aren't working. So Vincent informs them that he'll need to navigate through the underground oxygen supply pipe to return to the base, fix the Skylink, and call for assistance. While Vincent is making his way through the pipe, Lane takes a blood sample from Brunel and discovers that he's infected with the same bacteria found in Marco's sample. A few minutes later, Vincent starts to panic as he remembers his ordeal at the space station. Lane soothes him and advises him to put his Aurora experience behind him. Vincent mentions that Mission Control should have screened out people like him, so Lane clarifies that everyone on the crew is just as frightened as he is. Vincent eventually arrives at the main base and is met with the sight of blood splattered across the floor and walls. In the meantime, Lane figures out that they could use antibiotics to combat the bacteria, so she draws a blood sample from Brunel to test its reaction to an antibiotic mixture. When they administer the mixture to Brunel, his body twists and turns. Lane guesses that he's trying to resist the infection, but Kim insists that the movement is due to his reflexes. When the body ceases to move, Lane collects another blood sample and finds that the bacteria has stopped growing. Kim then transfers the mixture into a decontamination spray so they can turn it into a mist and use it against the infected astronauts. Vincent is able to reach Aurora, but the power unexpectedly goes out before he can alert them about their crisis. Erwin suddenly sees on the screen that the infected astronauts are returning to the base because they can't get through the doors of the hydroponic dome. They choose to unlock the door to draw the infected astronauts to the airlock and douse them with antibiotics. One of the infected astronauts enters the airlock and begins to squirm on the floor shortly after they turn on the decontamination spray. However, Lane finds out that the effect is only short-lived because the bacteria have begun to resist the antibiotic. While on his way to restore the power, Vincent encounters an infected Harrington. He repeatedly hits the infected astronaut's head with a flashlight, but he doesn't stay down, so Vincent retreats to the oxygen pipe. Vincent requests Lane to open the panel, but he alerts her that he couldn't seal the other end of the pipe. Before Lane opens the panel, she tells Kim and Erwin to put on their helmets because Vincent didn't seal the pipe on the base side. After they help Vincent out of the pipe, Kim picks up 2 antibiotic bottles and hurls them at the infected astronaut. While Kim keeps the infected astronaut busy, the others attempt to escape from the dome, but they can't open the airlock. Erwin sees that Brunel's body is starting to come back to life, so he decides to lock the door, leaving Kim and the other infected astronaut inside. The remaining team members succeed in unlocking the door, but the infected astronaut stabs Lane in the leg with scissors before they can get away. As soon as they're outside, the team makes a beeline for the rover. Vincent gives Lane an antibiotic shot to slow the bacteria's growth and allow her body to combat the infection. Soon, they realize that the rover doesn't have enough energy to get them to the landing area. Erwin suggests they should walk, but Lane can't because of her leg injury. Vincent proposes they return to the base to treat her. When Erwin mentions they have other choices, Lane guesses he wants to leave her because she could be infected. Lane counters that Erwin could also be infected since Brunel had grabbed his neck earlier. Erwin remembers there's another rover at Marco's dig site and notes it still has enough power to reach the landing area. After reaching the excavation site, Erwin goes to the other rover on foot. Once inside, Erwin gets in touch with Vincent and tries to persuade him to abandon Lane, suspecting she's infected. When Vincent declines, Erwin chooses to set off alone. The infected astronauts manage to track them, so Vincent and Lane navigate the rover through a sandstorm in an attempt to shake them off. Vincent assures that they'll have sufficient power to reach the landing spot by morning after the sun recharges the rover's batteries for an hour. Later, Lane admits that she can't help but wonder if a part of Brunel's consciousness still lingers as she watches him struggle. She worries that Brunel might still be trapped in his body, unable to control it. Before long, the Aurora lander leaves the space station and sets course for the planet. In the morning, Vincent wakes up to a message from the space station saying they're dispatching a rescue team. He tries to reply, but the space station can't hear him. Vincent notices that Lane has exited the rover, so he traces her path. He eventually locates her, but Lane warns him to keep his distance as she believes the infection is setting in. Vincent rushes to her, but Lane removes her helmet and dies from lack of air. Shortly after, her body revives and assaults Vincent. After Vincent subdues her, Lane pleads with him to end her life, so he reluctantly picks up a rock and strikes her head. Shortly after, Vincent spots the Aurora lander coming closer, so he dashes to the landing area. He notices 3 infected astronauts heading towards the lander, so he warns them not to open the ship's door. Vincent can hear them over the radio, but it seems the lander crew can't hear him. Soon after they exit the ship, Vincent hears their terrified screams as the infected astronauts attack them. When Vincent gets on the ship, he finds Erwin in the cockpit. Even though he's conscious and aware, Erwin is showing signs of infection, so Vincent tells him he can't let him return home because they can't risk bringing the bacteria to Earth. Erwin attacks him and manages to stab a knife through Vincent's helmet in the struggle. As Erwin tries to pilot the ship, Vincent grabs the knife and stabs Erwin. Erwin lunges at Vincent as the ship autonomously ascends to space. Vincent repeatedly headbutts Erwin until he becomes motionless. He then removes his blood-stained helmet and opens the hatch to throw out the body. Later, Vincent communicates with Mission Control to let them know that the entire Tantalus base crew has been infected with a dangerous bacteria, and the rescue team they dispatched has also died. He mentions that he doesn't have enough fuel to reach the space station, but he has sufficient supplies to last until a rescue team arrives. However, he suspects that he might be infected. He shares his plan to crash the ship back to Mars if he confirms he's infected, so he won't endure a slow, agonizing death when it incinerates in the atmosphere. Vincent says he'll wait for a response as he floats in space, waiting for death. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.